Okay. Okay. Let's go ahead now. You are on mute, Nina.
Yeah. Number 6, the objects of the senses. The 5 objects are sound, contact, form, taste, and smell, pertaining to the 5 senses of perception, with audition, touch, sight, taste, and smell, respectively.
So
Besides,
5 objects of perception that we just talked about, right? They are listed here. But these are there are objects that they perceive. So those objects, whatever these things perceive, are also part of kshetra. Okay.
Besides the above, the Lord further describes some more modifications. By the term modifications is meant the tendencies which bring about various changes for the purpose of the manifestation in diverse forms. Number 7, desire. The mental attitude which gives a feeling of enjoyment in the favorable and that of aversion for the unfavorable is called desire. Number 8, aversion. This mental attitude arises on experiencing the unfavorable and on being deprived of the favorable. Number 9, enjoyment. The feeling of happiness caused by experiencing the favorable and getting rid of the unfavorable gives rise to a sense of enjoyment. Number 10, suffering. The feeling of unhappiness caused by experiencing the unfavorable and being deprived of the favorable gives rise to a sense of suffering. Number 11, aggregate. The collective placement of the gross principles in the shape of the physical body has been referred to as the physical aggregate in which the senses function. Number 12, awareness. It is the faculty which equips one with the power to experience happiness or unhappiness. Number 13, fortitude. This is the power with which one is able to stand up to the stresses of the external and the internal stimuli. It would be observed that the field has for its contents and modifications several traits associated with the mental makeup of a human being. However, the human being is not the real being of a person. The body is itself a manifestation of the individualized self.
So the next set, first we talked about the physical aspects, right? Now there are impulsions which cause change from one state to another, right? These impulsions are called the modifications, right? Modifications as in things that will cause us to change or do something, propel us into some kind of action, right? So it's like, in physics, you would call this an external force that gets applied to a physical body, right? Which then makes it change its course of direction or change its speed or whatever, right? It causes a change. That external force is called modifications. They create that change in the composition of your gunas, which is then going to create a different outcome, right? You go from one state to another, right? Those are modifications. So what are those modifications? Desire. These are those feelings, right? Desire really propels you into action. Desire will create a reason for you to do something. Similarly, aversion, right? Desire and aversion, likes and dislikes, they are two different modifications, correct? They cause us to go from one to another based on what feelings they created. So likes and dislikes, same as desire and aversion. Enjoyment and suffering, right? Enjoyment and suffering. Now, enjoyment and suffering is at the level of mind. This is not pain or pleasure. Pain and pleasure are experienced at the level of body. So your senses will experience it. And then they get converted into enjoyment or suffering in our mind, right? Aggregate here is basically this physical body. You need to put these gross principles together in a certain box for the senses to actually operate. And in Hindi, it is called pind. Okay, in Sanskrit also it is called pind. The aggregate here is called pind. Awareness. Now, this is reflected in our intellect. Awareness is that faculty which will cause us to experience everything else, happiness or unhappiness, right? And then we have fortitude, which allows us to be able to withstand the stresses. These are the various modifications that cause a change in the kshetra. Okay, so we've now understood the contents and those which cause a change, the impulsions that cause the change in the kshetra. Because kshetra is constantly changing, right? That's what we said. Kshetra is constantly changing. So some of the impulsions that cause it to change, the modifications are listed here. Okay.
Tuhina,
Yeah.
I have a question here. So these impulsions and modifications, basically desire, aversion, enjoyment, suffering, all these are like, mind based. It's a mental suffering. And awareness is intellect based, right? Like, the awareness, it is intellect from the experience. And fortitude is from one able, this is the power with which one is able to stand up to the stresses of the external and internal stimuli, where it is kind of come from.
Fortitude comes from intellect knowing what is the right thing to do and directing the mind so that mind is not vacillating between desire and aversion. So that mind directs your senses. Okay, so that your mind directs your senses to behave in a certain manner. Otherwise, senses will cringe away from anything which causes aversion in the mind, and senses will go towards more and more of that which causes desire in the mind. Right? So whatever mind likes or whatever mind dislikes, it causes the senses to act accordingly. Now, when intellect comes into play, it says, no, this is not the right principle. And it forces the mind to put aside its likes and dislikes, in the sense that likes and dislikes will still come, but the intellect makes sure that mind does not act on them. You just be aware of them. There is a like, there is a dislike. All right. But is this also the right thing to do? If it is not, then I will behave in a certain different manner, which is in line with the principles, right? That is called fortitude. So fortitude is driven by intellect necessarily, because it is something that is the opposite of going ahead with likes and dislikes, desires and aversion.
Thank you.
Why is awareness as a concept put through in intellect? Because intellect is the closest to kshetra. Okay, it is the closest to consciousness. It is made of that iron which is going to get aligned by the magnet when it comes close to it. It is created in such a fashion that it can reflect the kshetra, it can reflect the God, it can reflect consciousness very well. Okay, and because it reflects the consciousness really well, that is why that concept of awareness, that sense of what is going on, is there in intellect. But it is only reflected consciousness. It is not real consciousness. That awareness, so that's why there's a difference between the two words, awareness and consciousness. Consciousness becomes aware, and consciousness reflects that awareness in intellect. That's why when we think, if you don't understand the concept of God, you always think, I am my intellect. Because my intellect is what is becoming aware of everything. My intellect is what is saying, do this, don't do that. Right? So, and why that happens is because intellect is actually reflecting consciousness and then directing everything else. That is why it is at the top, because it is closest to God. But again, remember that Despite all that we physically experience and we think that intellect thinks, intellect is aware, it is still actually insentient. It is part of kshetra. Okay, and as soon as consciousness is removed from it, as soon as the power of the Lord is removed from it, as soon as the capital S self removes its power from it, that the individualized Jivatma leaves the body, that intellect also dies down. Like just the way the moment you remove magnet from the vicinity of iron, it stops acting like a magnet anymore. So intellect is acting like that magnet. It acts like a magnet because a magnet is put next to it. The moment you remove the magnet, this is no longer a magnet, it's just an ordinary piece of iron, right? So intellect is very similar to that. But we confuse that iron which has been magnetized because of proximity to magnet. We start thinking that that iron, piece of iron itself is magnet. But it's not. It is insentient. It is not really aware. It is only reflecting the awareness of consciousness next to it.
Thank you.
Oh, I lost. Okay, the next one. Anita, would you like to read the next one? Cannot hear you, Anita. You're on mute.
In Shloka 2, the Lord had said that real knowledge or perception springs from knowing the essential characteristic of the field and the farmer. As explained there, this knowledge or perception differs from the objective knowledge in such much as in the case of a perception of supreme, the knower attains to the supreme by realizing him. Thus, the description of the real knowledge or perception, which follows in the next 5 shlokas, that means for perception, are included in the term of perception itself.
Here, what is being again emphasized is there is a difference between objective knowledge and the real knowledge. And the difference is that when you take in objective knowledge or you take in materialistic knowledge, there is a distinction between the object of knowledge, that which needs to be known, the knowledge itself, and the knower of the knowledge. So there's knower of knowledge, there's object of knowledge, and there's a knowledge itself that gets transmitted, right? But the knower of the knowledge does not become the object of the knowledge. If I come to know what is Jupiter and I understand the characteristics of Jupiter and I fully get what Jupiter is all about, it does not make me Jupiter, right? But the knowledge, the real knowledge, that is the perception of what is real, what is unreal, is different in the sense that once I perceive what is real, once I perceive Bhagwanji, I become Bhagwanji itself. Because there is no other way to know him. You cannot know that which is limitless by remaining limited. Because the moment you are limited, everything that you create, all the knowledge that you have is limited. And so you cannot know the limitless. And the moment you become limitless to know that which is limitless, you have become limitless. Okay, that's a very big difference between the two, right? A lot of times, the word that is used to describe the God or the limitlessness or the consciousness is also love, with capital L, not the small l love. The small l love, which we use in our daily relationships, that actually is not real love. It is attachment, right? It is always surrounded with expectations. And so it is very limited in nature. I will love this person, but I will not love that person. I will love this person only as long as A, B, C, D is happening. The moment that does not happen, I become uninterested, or I become irritated, or I become annoyed, and I say harsh things to that person, right? So this is all small L love, which is basically attachment filled with expectations. The capital L love is that universal love, a love that will flow irrespective of who you are, irrespective of who I deal with, and it is something that is going to, it is also what we call bhakti, right? In the last 6 chapters that we did, that bhakti is capital L love. And the moment you embark yourself on the journey to find real love, it will transform us as well, right? So it is transformative. You cannot learn, you cannot go, not just like acquiring this knowledge will change you into that object of knowledge, but the very journey of acquiring that knowledge is going to transform us. Okay. Another important thing as we are embarking on this Gyan Yoga, there is a very, very tight linkage between bhakti and Gyan that we must keep in mind at all times, right? Just plain Gyan without bhakti, bhakti meaning love, their wisdom will not dawn on us. It will only increase our ego. So it won't really lead us to God, because it hasn't really touched me deep inside. It hasn't transformed me, right? That knowledge will only increase, that Gyan will only increase my ego, all right? Similarly, bhakti without Gyan is blind faith, right? Again, that is, then it becomes superstitious and it becomes very limited in nature, because I don't know what I'm doing, why I'm doing. That also then becomes a form of attachment, right? So bhakti combined with the real Gyan is the real thing here. That is what is transformative, and that is what will lead us to Bhagwanji. One or the other by itself is limiting in their own ways. Okay. Okay. Amanitvam dambhitvam
Amanitvam dambitvam
ahimsa kshantirarvajam
ahimsa shishastrajam
ahimsa kshantirarvajavam
ahimsa shi shanti rajyavam
rarjavam
rajyavam
acharyopasanam shaucham
acharyopasanam saucham
स्थैर्यमात्म विनिग्रह
स्थैर्यमात्र विनीतवः humility, unpredictedness, non-injury, forgiveness, gratitude, worshipping the perspective, purity, steadiness, self-control. Perception along with its means in the shloka and the succeeding 4 shlokas, the means of perception have been described as being perception itself.
See, this is very important. The means of perception are the same as perception itself, right? No object of knowledge, the means of acquiring that knowledge, the knowledge itself, and the acquirer of knowledge all become one and the same. There remains no difference between any of them. So when they are describing to us that perception, the means of perception are being included in perception itself. Because the moment we acquire that knowledge, the moment we acquire that perception through the means of perception, they are one and the same. So what does that mean? That means that if you want to have that perception, all you need to do is follow those means of perception. Because the moment we we embody those means of perception, they will immediately become perception. They will immediately lead us to perception. Okay, so our goal then does not need to be perception itself. Our goal just needs to be the means of perception. We need to understand means of perception. Then it becomes an automatic journey. Yeah.
It would be useful to understand their full significance because many of them seemingly go against the views prevalent in the world. There is nothing unusual in this because the prevalent views are based on the assumption that the world as it appears is real. On the other hand, as perception develops, it becomes clear that the phenomenal world of names and forms is not the reality which it appears to be. This is why the means of perception may appear to be the contrary of the prevalent views. A brief description of the means of perception follows. Humility.
So again, this is important to become cognizant of and to accept that the knowledge that is being given to us may be very, very different from the views that are, or the manyata that is there in the world, right? Acknowledge that difference and understand that there is a reason for this difference, because the basis of understanding is completely opposite. The manyata in the physical world, in the outer world, is that this everything that we see around us is real. And it is in that manyata that the concepts of YOLO are born, right? So the way people would lead their lives, the way the decision making happens is going to be entirely different when you understand that the basis is that this world is this world is unreal. And everything in this world is composed of kshetra. And because everything in this world is composed of kshetra, it is constantly transient and it is not real. So my decision making should not be based on that which is unreal. It should be based on that which is real. And there's only one that is real, right? So in this, during these holidays, we happened to see Avatar again, right? The first version. It was interesting how, see, the avatars are the real people. They live in reality. They understand reality. They understand there is Eva, right? Eva is consciousness. Eva is what is real. They understand that energy is only borrowed for a short period of time and then it is returned back. They understand that the whole world of consciousness is seeped with Eva. They understand that Eva gives them direction on what to do, what not to do. They understand that there is interconnectedness in everything through Eva, right? They understand that, so they are awake. They are wise people. They are awake to the reality. Versus the human beings coming from Earth, they call them dreamwalkers. Dreamwalkers, those that are sleeping and are dreaming only. Very interesting, right? And when Jake Sully comes back in one of his video logs, he says that these guys have no need for anything that we have to offer. There is nothing that we can give to them that will corrupt them or make them move, make them change their way of being. Because when you are awake to the higher joy, there is nothing from this material world that you will want to satisfy yourself, to fulfill yourself. There is nothing in the material world for you. It's like a child who is now owns real cars will never cry for a toy car any longer. He has no use for toy cars any longer, right? The same concept which was depicted in the Avatar as well.
So, yes, can I just quickly add?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can.
Yeah. Okay. So I think one thing to understand between when you have to understand Kshetra Gya, it is not bookish knowledge. So unlike you learning how to do engineering or driving a car, you use and train your intellect. You use your intellect to train your body, and then you develop the skill to drive a car. But for you to understand Kshetra gear, you need to change your character. You require yourself to alter your character to be able to perceive and experience it, which is why we say Antakaranti Shuddhi. Perceiving this knowledge when we have conversation, that is a very limited um, tool for experiencing Kshetra gear. The only way to truly experience it is by changing your character. So which is why this shloka and the next, I think, 4 or 5 shlokas will talk about what you can focus on using your intellect. And when you start using your intellect to focusing on these principles and qualities, you will start getting a glimpse of Kshetragya. Yes.
Humility, the sense of being superior, respectable, or the praiseworthy, and the expectation of acclaim on that basis gives rise to happiness. On receiving the acclaim, one feels flattered. Generally, acclaim is thought to be highly desirable and is coveted to such an extent that sometimes even questionable means are adapted to get to it. But attainment of perception is different matter altogether. For this, there has to be a complete absence of sense of superiority, respectability, or acclaim, and it is this which constitutes humility. Humility leads to the total indifference towards praise or honor. For a person with humility, praise or honor is completely meaningless. In fact, the manifestation of any virtue or good quality at any time is an indication of the Lord's grace at the moment. Even great muscular power or physically powers may be lost completely due to some ailment or old age. What is there in anyone which one may be proud of? If at all there is a manifestation of any excellence, it should be gratefully acknowledged as being due to the grace of God. To think it to be a part of one's personality would be a great blunder. And on its fading away, on its fading away, there would be nothing but grief for its loss. The great poet Abdurrahman Kandana was a minister of Akbar court and was a highly charitable disposition. While giving charities, he used to keep his eyes lowered in modesty. One being asked the reason, he said, someone else is the giver and keeps on giving all the while, but everyone mistakes me for the giver. Hence, are my eyes lowered with shame. What an epitome of real humility. Unpredictable, coveting for price or any gains by publicizing the assumed merit or qualities without any real in without being really possessed of them would constitute prettenness. The complete absence of covertness would be called unprettenness, but ordinarily people feign that They are virtuous without having any virtue. They feign that they are selfless, while in fact they are highly selfish. They feign that they serve others, while they serve only selfish ends, only their selfish ends. Thus, they desire to be known for moral excellence, which is not in them. As against this, an unpretentious person would not be given to self-projection. The sense of modesty of such person creates abhorrence in the mind of Christ. Non-injury. To avoid causing any injury to anyone by thought, speech, or any action amounts to inculcation of the sense of non-injury to others. Such person would rather undergo suffering than cause it to anyone else. The unconditional observance of non-injury has been acclaimed to be supreme amongst all moral virtues. In the presence of a person post in the sense of non-injury, even predatory animals and bloodthirsty men give up their violent habits. In the life of Swami Dhyananda Saraswati, several incidents occurred when person who approached him with the murderous intent gave up their foul intention and surrendered themselves to his mercy. Forgiveness. Equipped with a forgiving nature, a person is completely free of the desire to punish or wreak vengeance on being harmed by another person, even while having the power of revenge. A person with such a nature does not count a wrong done as wrong. What to think of causing even the slightest harm to anyone in revenge? Rectitude. To maintain a simple and straightforward stance in thought, speech, and action under all circumstances is called rectitude. Crookedness, passivity, and tortuosity are all contrary to rectitude. Some people hold the view that for achieving worldly objective, the path of rectitude is of no avail. Such an acceptance goes contrary to the sense of rectitude. A self-realized saint used to say in jest that those who adopt crookedness for success in the world are in fact great renouncers, as they renounce even the supreme gain of God realization for the sake of ephemeral worldly success. Whether it is renunciation or stupidity can easily be understood. Worshipping the preceptor. This quality is acquired by having a feeling of reverence for the person who gives the guidance in the path of knowledge, self-improvement, and spirituality, and also by having a sense of obedience for providing necessity, comfort, and convenience for preceptor. Such a service to the preceptor is one of the principal means of attaining perception. To place one's doubts before the preceptor with humility for their removal is necessary. But if the preceptor says something against one's firmly held views, they should be given by forthwith. Purity of body, mind, and speech is essential. The mind became pure. The mind became pure by giving up covetousness, malice, and crookedness. The speech becomes pure by chanting the Lord's name, by reciting scriptures and His praise, and also by talking sweetly. Income is purified if earned by honest means and with good conduct. The riches are purified if utilized in charity. The body is purified by keeping it clean. If the mind is kept clear of dirty thoughts, all other purification follow automatically. Steadiness, keeping the mind firm, leads to steadiness. Then the greatest fortune is faced with fortitude, and it is regarded as a play of one's destiny or God's will. The mind is not allowed to become a prey of any agitation, anger, fear, or avarice and duty is performed even against the heavy odds. All the qualities fall within the aims of steadiness, self-control. Control of the mind, senses, and the body constitutes self-control. Holding fast to what is proper and keeping clear of what is improper, while doing all the actions of everyday life and being unaffected by a personal bias helps in self-control. By that means, indiscipline is rooted out, and the temptations of the world do not distract a person.
So now what we are reading are means of perception, means of acquiring the knowledge of the God, means of getting to know the reality, right? And the means of perception are the same as perception itself. Once we acquire these means of perception, automatically perception becomes available to us, right? And perception itself is something very far from us. It is perception of reality is very, it is unmanifest, really, right? Whereas means of perception are manifest, and hence they are within our grasp. We understand them better. Okay, so they should become our goal of how we acquire these things.
When does Papa come back?
After the class, I'll talk to you. So the first one, so all of these are ways of being. These are ways of being and what we need to cultivate in ourselves behaviorally, and not just behave. So again, behaviorally is a very shallow word, because behavioral means something that you consciously do for one person or one situation and may change your behavior in another situation. A better word is state of being, because when we become something, then we will always be that kind of person. Our behavior will remain consistent for all the people in all the situations, irrespective of how the events unfold or what circumstances are at play, right? So we need to develop these specific means of perception within ourselves. The first one being humility. Now, humility, why is humility the first thing mentioned here? Because humility necessarily means that we have to give up our ego. Now, giving up ego doesn't mean that I will not remain Tuhina with my sense of, with whatever qualities that have been given to Tuhina, or Vijay will not remain Vijay with the specific qualities that have been given to him, right? Stomach doesn't stop remaining stomach, it does not become heart, right? Stomach, heart, and all other organs will continue to do their specific job in the whole, because if they don't, then the whole will collapse, correct? So we all continue to do our jobs in the circumstances that we've been given, because we are perfect in that situation, and our exact efforts are required for the correct functioning of the whole. We are all part of the God's grand scheme, and we are perfect in our little places, right? So But we give up our ego in the sense of, we give up our sense of entitlement. We understand that this little ego, which is only a differentiating factor in us, is not me. I am not the doer, is what you need to give up. The moment you give up doership is when you become an instrument of the Lord. And humility comes with it, because now you have nothing to feel arrogant about. The qualities that we have, the material things that we have around us, or the appellations that are given to us, they are not really ours. The giver is someone else, as has been very beautifully explained here, right? देवन हारा और है, देत रहत दिन रैन, लोक भरम मो पर करें, ताते नीचे नैन. So this complete awareness that the charity that is coming from me is not mine. Someone else is giving it. I am just a means here. If I am a good singer, or I am a good artist, or I am a good manager, or I am a good cook, or I am a good administrator, then those qualities are not mine. They have been given to me temporarily. The resources that I'm utilizing to effect a situation are again not mine. They don't belong to me. I have been temporarily given those resources to be able to do my duty that has again been given to me by the resources, by the energy, by the intellect, by the qualities given to me by the Lord. And just as they have been given, they will be taken away one day when the job is done, or if I misuse them, right? So that is why humility is the most important thing, because the biggest barrier between us and realizing real knowledge is my ego. Because with ego, I stay in I, me, minus. I stay in the body consciousness. There's always them versus me. The moment we dissolve the ego, we realize there is no them, there is no I, there is only one. And that is the real perception, right? That is why humility is the most important means of perception. The second is unpretentiousness. So while humility is where you have to remain subdued, you have to make sure that your ego doesn't rise in the face of what we actually have, qualities that we have, or the resources or the circumstances that we actually have. Unpretentiousness is which is basically the opposite of pretentiousness. Pretentiousness is really something that you don't even have, but you pretend. That is why it is pretentiousness. You're pretending to have something. You can be pretentious about having humility, right? You may be pretentious. So there's a lot of pretending happening. You're not really that person, but you want to show other people. So that whole thing, the moment we are in a space of making other people like me, we start being pretentious, because we try and see what the other person wants of me. What does the other person like? And even if that is not me, or that is not what I'm feeling, I will try and pretend to be that person. I lose all authenticity when I'm trying to make others like me. Right? That is why pretentiousness is not desirable. And we need to constantly we need to cultivate unpretentiousness. Right? And when we are unpretentious, then we are authentic. Then we are aware of what the reality is, and we stay grounded in that. We don't pretend to be what we are not. Being authentic is the starting point of all knowledge, because first we have to be unpretentious about the fact that we don't really know everything. In fact, we know nothing. The more knowledge we really gain in a true fashion, the more we understand how less we know. So that's the first thing that we need to stop being pretentious about, that we know everything, right? That's the biggest pretentiousness that we see, especially the more degrees we get, the more pretentious we get about being so knowledgeable, about being the Miss Know-it-all, right? Then the next pretentiousness is about about being good, right? We start reading Gita, and the pretentiousness of being virtuous comes in droves, right? I am better than others. And that is again pretentiousness. This is not for which we would say that please develop humility for it, because we are really not good or virtuous. We're not divine, but we pretend to be that. We're not really good. We are all very selfish people. We are driven by likes and dislikes on a daily basis. But we pretend as if like we are being driven by principles all the time, right? So being unpretentious is to know that I'm constantly vacillating. There are times when I'm able to control my mind, and I'm able to, as I go on my path, I'm able to move past my likes and dislikes. But more often than not, I fall in the trap of likes and dislikes, right? Being aware of what we are doing and stop trying to look good. Rather, try and work on ourselves to actually be good. So that is unpretentiousness. Next is non-injury. Non-injury or non-violence. Now, in general, most of us would imagine, oh, we are very non-violent people because I can't imagine killing anybody. I'm not a murderer. I don't hit my children. I don't hit, I'm not a physically like aggressive person. But that is only like the first step of non-violence. We are all extremely violent people because honestly, on a daily basis with our words, we hurt many people, particularly those that are close to us. We say mean things, we say rude things. Our speech is not sweet, right? The moment we are being, now that doesn't mean that you have to mollycoddle people, right? It doesn't mean that you will not be strict with your children, that you will not discipline your children. All these things are very different in their nature, right? You can be sweet and truthful without inflicting injury on others. As long as you, when you speak, you use those 5 gates to cross through.
This alone.
Well done.
See?
Well done. I saw that. Make your sandwich. Okay. So we need to cultivate that. So I think we need to inculcate non-violence at the level of speech and then at the level of thought. Okay. I think most of us already practice non-violence at the level of physical nature. So that's why we already need to go to the second level of speech and then the thought. It all starts at the thought level. So we have to get there eventually, right? So we shouldn't be having violent thoughts in our mind, right? When we get angry, then we can say a lot of things in our own mind and then control it at that level and not actually act on it. But even that mental thing is what we eventually needs to go, right? That is the level of control we need to have. And how will we have that control? How will we not get angry at a person enough so that even in our mind, we are not saying bad things to them? Is when we recognize that there is no him versus me, there is only me. When I understand that everything that is happening is part of Lord's scheme, that we are all masterpieces in work, right? Every one of us is that special dot in a calligraphy where every single dot is important to make sure that that calligraphy comes out well. Every dot has to be perfect. So we are all those dots that have to be perfect, and we are works of perfection. We are all WIPs, but all of us are that ultimate masterworks that when completed will be that perfect masterworks, right? And everything, end of the day, all of these things start where? Start inside of me, not outside. So first, non-violence to my own self. Can I stop being angry with my own self? Can I forgive myself? Every one of these things apply to your own self first. And that's the only way. You see, there is no me, there is no you. There is only one interconnected world. So what I think in myself, now imagine whatever is being going on in this brain, whatever I feel inside of me is going to be reflected everywhere else, because it is what is, because everything is interconnected eventually. So how I treat myself will get propagated to all of you, to the wider world. So the way I will treat myself, the way I will perceive myself, the way I will behave with myself is exactly how others are going to perceive me, or exactly how others will treat me. So if I think that I'm not worthy of love, if I think I'm not worthy of respect, others will not love me, others will not respect me, and I will constantly create situations where I will be disrespected. If I think I am not worthy of wealth, then obviously constantly other people will not value me either. So you impact everything outside of you by impacting what is inside of you in a genuine way, which is why we constantly say that what is outside of us is a reflection of what is inside of us. So there is no work to be done outside. All the work has to be done inside of me. If I'm upset with how someone else is treating me, or how someone else is talking to me, or how someone else is not valuing me, the question to ask is, where am I not valuing myself? Where am I disrespecting my own self? What is my sense of self-worth? Where am I not forgiving myself? And when we start respecting ourselves, loving ourselves truly for who we are, with all our flaws and everything, and we truly value ourselves for everything that we are, we start valuing other people too. We start loving other people too.
So
I cannot
just,
forgive someone else unless I forgive myself first.
just to add to that, valuing yourself, accepting your flaws, appreciating yourself, respecting yourself is not, it's not about ego. You have to first identify with capital S self. And once you realize I am that divine nature, then it is really then it's easier for you to accept the flaw, because the flaw is also impermanent. Flaw is also design of the nature. It doesn't matter. Nothing that we do will matter 100 years from now. Nothing we do. In fact, chances are most people will have forgotten our existence, our ego, everything 100 years from now. The only thing that will matter is whether we are able to get to self-realization. Right? So what Tuvina is saying, just remember that we have to first figure out who am I, and that is our capital S self nature. Everything else you have to be slightly distance from, to appreciate, respect, and observe.
So forgiveness, already covered part of it. But important thing again here is, free of the desire to punish or wreak vengeance on being harmed, even while having the power of revenge. Right? Most of us live our lives at various stages feeling a sense of victimhood, right? Where, uh, and that is a very low level of energy to be in, okay? Sense of victimhood means that we don't have power to change our situation, and we are hopeless, and we have to bear something without having a choice in the matter. Okay. The truth is that we always have a choice. The truth is that we are always powerful enough to change our situation. Okay. So, and that power, so when they say when you have the power of revenge, we always have the power of revenge, always, which means that we always have the power or of exercising forgiveness. Okay, and it
So,
always starts with ourselves first. Yes, Abhinav.
so the choice that Tuina is referring to, the only choice we have is the choice of changing our bhav and our perception. not the choice of the circumstance or the result or the situation or the action. Our only choice is the choice of perception and the choice of bhav in that situation. So if your choice in at a bhav level is that of empathy, that hey, I know what anger is. I experience it. This person may not has expressed anger. I understand where it comes from. He feels very passionate about it. Why blame him for a mistake or a weakness we all share? He's going through his journey, I'm going through mine, right? I just wish him well. I hope he continues further on his journey. That's the only choice we have. And real forgiveness will come only from the point we just discussed earlier, our identification with the capital S self and accepting our own limitations. Once you become empathetic or you understand why you are limited, you will have great empathy for everybody else's weaknesses.
Correct. So, which is why I keep emphasizing on how we need to start with ourselves, because when somebody else does something that you get hurt by, the question is, how can I forgive them? We feel so much rage and anger inside. You feel like, I don't know how to forgive this person, or why should I forgive this person? Right? All of this happens because we have not ever learned to truly forgive ourselves for our own mistakes either. We hold ourselves, we crucify ourselves a lot for every single small mistake, perceived or otherwise, that we make ourselves. Because we crucify ourselves, we crucify others. And we're not even aware of that way of being most times. Then comes rectitude. Rectitude is basically all about decluttering our physical and mental life, creating white spaces in our physical and mental life. Okay. When we create white spaces, it ensures simplicity. There are less after the class. There are less pathways to walk. There are less choices to make on a daily basis. There are less number of issues to resolve. So we need to declutter our physical and mental life. Okay. So that is what we really need to do. For rectitude, essentially think of it physically, action item, declutter your physical life, declutter your mental life. Start with decluttering of your physical life, which will have an automatic knock-on effect on your mental life. Declutter the choices you make, declutter or say less, be aware of what you say yes to, be aware of what you say no to. And that will create simplicity in our mental, physical life, and in our thoughts, in our speech.
And just to add, when you say things, yes to things or yes to situations or yes to tasks, the way to do it is always align it to purpose. Right? We've learned this earlier. I'm just connecting the dots. That's how you declutter. And the purpose cannot be, oh, I may need something in the future. The purpose cannot be, oh, I want more of it. Oh, I want to build relationship with somebody else, so I should have something like this. Purpose has to be aligned to your current uh, stage of growth, whether it helps you with your ultimate udhar or helps you do duty better for your family.
Correct. Now, the next one is, I'll come back to worshipping the preceptor in the end. Purity. Purity of body, mind, and speech is absolutely like essential. We can't do anything without having the purity. Okay? Because if the vessel is not pure, it does not matter what kind of water you put in it, a pure water will also become impure. Okay? Which is why purity of mind, body, and speech is constantly emphasized upon. Okay, the naam jap that we do is a way to purify your speech. and it also purifies our thoughts, right? The sadhana that we do, all the sadhanas that are put down here, whether they are physical in nature, whether they are mental in nature, they are all there for purification. The entire first 6 set of chapters where we are talking about karma yoga leads to purity of body, mind, and speech. Karma yoga does not lead to jnana by itself, but karma yoga creates purity of our antahkaran and of our body, so that we become eligible to receive the jnana. Without that basic factor, we won't receive jnana. Okay, so it's like the basic grounding factor for us. Okay. Steadiness again is where we don't vacillate between one or the other, knowing that all the everything in this world is dual in nature, right? This world is dual, Maya is dual. Everything comes with its opposite, and they become manifest because of their opposites. If the opposite did not exist, that quality will cease to exist itself. For the manifestation itself, you need the opposite. You can't have a coin with only one side. The second side comes with it for the first side to become manifest in the first place. If there was no light, there would be no darkness. If there is no darkness, there is no perception of light. It's only because of heat that you are able to enjoy the rain. And when you are constantly in rain, then you enjoy the dryness that comes with a strong sun, right? It's because of heat that you can enjoy the cold wave, and it is because of cold that you're able to enjoy the heat. Otherwise, by itself, it becomes unbearable beyond a point, right? So steadiness of mind, by being able to go through periods of a lot of work versus a period of calmness, a period of chaos versus a period of steadiness, periods of happiness versus periods of pleasure versus periods of pain. Everything is looked at with evenness of mind, equanimity. Steadiness means equanimity of mind, irrespective of what is happening outside of us. Right? And then self-control. So self-control again is part of our karma yoga. Purity, steadiness, self-control. All of these come by practice of karma yoga. And they create वो कहते हैं हमें इन हिंदी से हमारी पात्रता बढ़ाते हैं for the grace. They increase our ability to absorb the grace of the Lord that is constantly being showered on us. So grace of God is all around us, constantly being showered, but our ability to absorb it depends on how pure our antakaran is, how big our vessel is, how ready our vessel is to be able to receive the grace. So self-control, equanimity, purity, all of these are qualities or means of perception we cultivate through the practice of karma yoga. Okay. And finally, worshipping the preceptor. Worshipping the preceptor is a very, very important aspect of our culture, of our tradition. Okay. And preceptor here, there are a lot of different meanings to this. The first meaning is the guru. Okay. Guru, जिसे हम कहते हैं ना कि all our scriptures are guru gamya. So the guru is one who will lead us into that, and who gives us the perception of the real perception. One who is going to, if when you are in the presence of a real guru, right? जो हमारी ग्रंथियां होती है ना, the knots inside of us, they get loosened up and opened up in their power, in the face of their power. They help to raise our consciousness. They help us to go beyond our limitations. So it is very important for us to have a very deep reverential attitude towards the guru. So currently, so for example, me and Abhinav here, by the way, are not gurus at all, right? We are just facilitators. The guru is the Gita that we hold in our hands. Our gurus are the realized saints who started this, Babaji and Babuji and Maiyaji. They are the ones who started this tradition, those who have seen the truth and lived that truth. They are the realized saints. They have the power. Okay? So bowing down to them with reverential attitude, the karpanya dosh that we do every time, doing it with full bhav is one form of worshipping the preceptor. When the guru tells us, so when something comes down to us as something that we need to do through Shalini Didi or Aparna Didi, it is not them speaking to us. It is being given to us by the gurus who have started this lineage. So being reverential towards that instruction and following it is extremely important, right? It is our form of giving reverence to them. Why is reverence so important? Is because it is only when we are in that state of mind do we open ourselves up to receiving their knowledge, to receiving their grace. Otherwise, we have shut our gates off. If we've shut the gate of our house, if you shut the door of our house, the grace cannot come in. With reverence, when we bow down and we open ourselves up, is when their grace can actually flow in. Zabardasti nahi aa sakti. Right? So now extend that out to larger set of things. Reverence towards food that we eat. If you really want the food to really nutrition your body properly, then doing a bit of puja, a gratefulness exercise before you consume that food, assuming an attitude of reverence as if that food is prasad, will automatically energize that food several times over and will nourish you several times over in every way than just eating food as a bhog. Okay? So now increase that to every other aspect of your life. You come into a new city. Can you bow down to the saints of that city and ask their permission to enter that city? Now you are in that moment, even when you're going for a travel, you've converted that into an action of yoga, because you're being aware of the energy, the saints and the Lord that is driving everything, and you're going down to them. When you're going to exercise, being reverential towards, say, Hanumanji, who helps to build the body up, is a form of opening yourself up to his grace so that your exercise goes well and is able to help you create a body that is fit for its duties, right? So every aspect of your life is actually governed by a certain deity. Every time of the day is governed by a certain deity. When we do Narayan Kavach, right? In Narayan Kavach, every single moment is like, in this moment, there is this deity who will watch over me. And when we do Devi Kavach, we talk about every single organ of our body being looked after by a certain deity, right? So in our tradition, every aspect, every moment of life and every aspect of physical life is spiritual, okay? And it is governed by a certain deity. When we open ourselves up to that level of reverence, the amount of awareness with which we live and the amount of gratefulness with which we live, the amount of thankfulness to the deities and seeking their blessings before we embark on every single second of our life, opens us up to immense amount of grace. So that is what is meant by worshipping the preceptor. The ultimate preceptor is the Lord. And being reverential towards him means being reverential towards all of his powers and deities through which he's reaching out to us. Okay?
I talk to Papa now.
No, after the class. I think it's already 12. So we've missed our chance to do the takeaways, but I really wanted to finish this this shloka. Otherwise, leaving it in middle then takes the impact away. So let's definitely do the takeaways on the chat group. Please make sure that everyone posts their takeaways. That's very important. And then we'll take up shloka in the next class. Do you have, if anybody has any questions, quick ones, we can take them. Otherwise, we can take this up in the next class, right? We can maybe start the next class with any set of questions people may have, and then we'll do the 8th shloka. Okay. Vijay, will you do the closing shlokas as well for us?
ॐ सर्वेषां स्वस्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे शान्तनिरामय सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ पूर्णमद पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेव अविष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
Narayan, everyone.